Who's this for? I think this is for anybody who is active in any regard in the dental space, the dental industry. There's a lot of players here and a lot of buyers. For those of you who are figuring out your pathway from where you are today to what your ultimate exit may be.
I think private equity and big money, right, have seen dentistry as that stable, profitable industry that has been undervalued in the past. You know, it's not uncommon for us, rather than scrape by and create something of your own.
One of the most enduring characteristics of hot money is it convinces the recipient that they are God's gift to capitalism, that it's because they are remarkable.
Everybody, glad to have you here with us. I have curated a top shelf group of people, many of you who know them, but if you don't, we'll get some introductions. The premise for today's conversation is about the marketplace and where we are in practice transitions, the buying and selling of dental practices in the marketplace today. Who's this for? I think this is for anybody who is active in any regard in the dental space, the dental industry. You could be young in practice right now, just getting out of school and trying to figure out what's your runway. How are you looking forward? You may be mid-career and figuring out what's my exit going to be, even though it might be 5, 6, or 7, or 10 years out. Well, what's that going to look like? And you may be on the last stages of your career trying to figure out right now, do I take an opportunity to exit? Which way do I go? What's involved? But just realizing that all of these transitions, all these stages in one's career, wherever you are in your stage, requires participation. It requires some level of collaboration and some knowledge about what you actually want in your life. Not to follow a model just because someone else did a model, but what do you want? There's a lot of players here and a lot of buyers. We'll define those as we go through here to know who the players are and then give you some pros and cons, some caveats for those of you who are figuring out your pathway from where you are today to what your ultimate exit may be, whenever that might be. So on my screen right now, I have Mr. Brandon Moncrief. Brandon is the principal with McLaren and Associates out of Austin, Texas. Brandon, just give us a little synopsis again of your experience, your history, and how you're involved today in our industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, David. McLaren and Associates has been around for 35 years. I've been in the dental industry for 20, 10 as a banker and 10 as a practice broker. We specialize in doing practice sales, practice brokerage, appraisals, and sell-side representation on DSO transactions. We do about 60 transactions a year. Most of the doctor-to-doctor transactions we do are in Texas, and we do DSO transactions nationwide.
Beautiful. Dr. Mike Abernathy, the wisdom in the room right here. Your CV is so long, sir, but give us the short shrift of it, if you would. And if you don't tell me the truth, I'm gonna add to it. So go ahead.
I was born and raised in McKinney, Texas, and I've owned 43 practices, and I've been retired for a few years. I write and talk, and as David says, I interrupt people's lives.
Yes, yeah, I interfere in people's lives, but
interfere, that's what it is.
Always in a positive way. Well, at least I see this positive. They may not see it that way, but you're always good medicine for the soul. So I love having you here. Thank you, Mike. Mr. Jared Duckett of Duckett & Ladd. Again, same thing. Your background, what you're doing today in the industry.
Yeah, so Duckett Ladd CPAs and advisors. We work specifically with dentists and also real estate as well. But really, you know, where we're seeing in the dental industry is just a lot of M&A, right? A lot of people looking to sell, a lot of DSOs looking to buy a lot of practices. So just really work with a lot of clients as they get along the journey to make that exit, if that makes sense.
Beautiful. And Bill, your side.
Yeah, I mean, Jared covered it well. We kind of see, we like working with dentists that are on an entrepreneurial journey. And like every journey has a beginning and an ending point. And I think the beginning point and the ending point are relevant to this conversation, David. So appreciate the opportunity to be on here.
Great. And my friend, Alistair McDonald, you, sir.
My story is one of different industries, 5 different industries. I've had 5 different businesses in 5 different industries, landing in dentistry about 6 or 7 years ago. So I'm probably the newbie to the industry, but had the privilege of working with some really high-performing docs that brought me more into practice ownership. I've owned, bought, grown, and sold a veterinary hospital, amongst other businesses. And was one of the founders and previously the chairman of the Dental Success Network, a group of about 1,000 docs with practices all over the world, actually. So that's what I do. I have a private client group of docs that I work with and some select individuals that keep me sharp and keep me paying attention.
Beautiful. Gentlemen, I'd like to start first with how did we get to where we are now today? When I was practicing a decade or more previously, didn't have all the options for potential exit we have today. How did we get here? Where did all of the money come from? Why is private equity so interested in our space? I'll just go back to the top. Brandon, what you've been around the block for a long time in banking as well. How did we get here?
DSOs have obviously been around for quite some time, but I would say about 10 years ago, there was a shift in the marketplace from the DSO mentality to where they looked at providers as being extremely valuable rather than just W-2 employees. They started to give them the opportunity to participate in partnership alongside the DSO and private equity's investment. And then about 5 years ago is when that trend started to accelerate. So there's been a tremendous amount of money flow into private equity over the past 10 years as the rich have gotten richer and as the stock market has continued to rise. To properly balance portfolios, you've got to shift some money into private equity. So we've seen a massive amount of cash flow into private equity, and dentistry has proven to be, recession-proof, pandemic-proof. It's a very fragmented and highly profitable industry, and industries like that gain the attention of private equity. So with DSOs evolving in their approach to dentistry and how they support doctors, combined with a massive influx of cash, it's caused a bit of a fever pitch as far as the acceleration of growth of DSOs fueled through private equity and then cheap bank money, with interest rates being so low. And we've only seen that accelerate, over the past few years.
Yeah, well said, well said. Mike Abernathy, you've been in the industry for many years, certainly a leader in your own right, and one who looked outside your own practice at an early age and started finding other models. And since you've exited your practice some years ago, you're still extremely relevant, helping so many docs navigate what their options are. Give us kind of your overriding picture, how we got to where we are.
DSOs have been around since 1975, and there were some tax advantages, that made it, but the thing that really has driven DSOs is that after about 2003, prior to 2000, it was like 98% of the graduates from dental school became owners. Now, with women being around 51% of the graduates, only 32% of the females and only 67% of the males are becoming owners now. So it's like less than 50% of the graduates from dental school, 6,800 last year, are becoming owners. We've never been in a situation where we had an unlimited number of employee dentists. That's fueled corporate practices. They can find doctors to work there. Now, with that, you have winners, you have losers. As we're filming this, we had skipped any type of financial recession for almost 12 years. And that wasn't driven just by the pandemic. It was overdue. We're seeing money come in internationally from countries where banking is crashing. And these people are going, if I even get 30, 40, 50% of my money out of this, I'm willing to pay really high dollars for this, especially in Canada. I've seen a lot of Chinese money come in, stuff like that. So it's an interesting deal. But I think too, not to be a Debbie Downer, but I think it's kind of a musical chair. Music plays, music stops, one chair is removed. Some of these corporations will fail. It's a greater fool theory. Equity money comes in when there is a better than average return on their money. And when you look at largest DSOs in the United States, we're seeing debt to income ratios of 8 or 9%. So I don't think that's sustainable. And so I'm not against DSOs. I think it's an incredibly good opportunity for doctors that are near their use before date. I really can't tell you because there's not a long enough track record on happy people on the younger doctors doing this. But we probably have maybe 3 a week that are going with DSOs that I'm familiar with every week. So anyway.
No, that's great. That's great. And Bill and Jared, Mike brought up the point with the number of female dentists that there are more employees available. Maybe also let's bring in the debt side of students coming out and graduating as young dentists. That's also adding to the higher number that are employable. But anything else you want to? I just want to bring that piece out as well.
I think that's a great point, and you guys both nailed it on the head. I'll take a little bit of what you said, Mike, is the mindset of new dentists coming out of dental school, maybe not wanting to be owners, but maybe it's because of that reason, David, is they're going to look for a consistent income stream immediately to start repaying that debt, because that debt load has just increased substantially. You know, it's not uncommon for us, and Bill, I think you'll agree, to talk to prospective clients that are looking to buy a practice and they've got $500,000 worth of student loan debt. And their thought is like, how am I going to repay that? It's so easy to go work for a DSO and get paid X consistent rather than scrape by and create something of your own. So I think it's a lot of that is where the DSOs have really come in. But also, Brandon, what you've said, I think private equity and big money, right, have seen dentistry as that stable, profitable industry that maybe, and maybe you guys might disagree, but has been undervalued in the past, because a lot of these PE groups look at buying other businesses at multiples of EBITDA, et cetera. And I think they're realizing that dentistry is very profitable, very stable, and there's money to be made. And I think the opportunity, the money's there, they want the yield, but also the opportunity's there, because dentists, older dentists, doctors are burnt out and they just want to sell it. They want to get rid of it. So I think the opportunity's there with the money. It's just kind of the perfect storm.
Yeah, and I'll jump in, Jared. I agree. I'll kind of piggyback off that last comment. I think that there is some supply there. And I think through the COVID pandemic, I think that supply has got even higher because people are tired and burnt out and sick of dealing with it. And it was a fever pitch in 2020. And as we move into 2021, 2022, it's still conversations we're having with dentists where they're still, you know, dealing with the lingering after effects of the frustration and the staffing and some state regulations and things. They're just pushing people to exit. And it's not just baby boomers. I mean, these are people who are, you know, 40s, 50s that are looking at exiting. Some of them are willing to look at DSOs and stick on for a while, but most of them, you know, are kind of wanting to move on and try to do something different. So, you know, I think that, again, Brandon, Mike, Jared, and I know Alistair will bring a great perspective too, but everything they've covered is everything that we're seeing. And I will say that, you know, we are getting a lot of people calling, you know, looking at acquisitions, but that's a small minority to the people coming out. And I think they know that going to corporate is a little bit more of a steady paycheck. And at that point, that's going to be hard for them to leave that relationship, even if they have an entrepreneurial bent, because they're going to have a debt load here and they're going to be looking at potentially another major debt load to get a practice. So it is something that I think that there is supply there, but the individual buyers just aren't there at this point.
Alistair, I'm going to give you a lot of leeway here to take all what's been stated so far, which has been right on point. Take it where you want to. I will just start with a little bit going back to how we got to here. You and I have had discussions over quite a bit of period of time that we've had 42 years of declining interest rates, which is, again, is a lot of the reason already brought up here on this panel as to why there's this seeking of yield for a lot of money. And that's driven a lot of this. So I will get your take, but also a little bit of your forecast on, start looking at what could shift this. What, you know, the opportunity that we have today is today. And that's great for people who are ready to exit and want to do it on these terms, whatever terms they are. But also want to give a little forecast to people that aren't quite there yet and how things could shift and as they make their plans forward. So let me let you sew into this conversation, sir.
Yeah, thanks. There's already a lot of insight being shared. I think if we look, there's two different things going on. One is the formation and expansion and growth of DSOs. As both Brandon and Mike have pointed out, there's really only ever been two reasons for a DSO to be formed. The first was back in the day, tax benefits, and the second is just simple economies of scale. We can start haggling on prices, we can get better margins, et cetera, et cetera. So there's the existence of DSOs, the pre-existence, the same version inside the vet space is a burgeoning industry. But there's a whole other factor entirely, which is valuations. So we've got a premise that makes sense, the economies of scale, etc. Interest tax rates not quite as beneficial as they would have been back in the day, but none of these really speak to the critical piece today, which is valuations. I am of the philosophy, and I think Mike is as well, that we are very much inside of a very large hot money cycle that has poured through multiple industries. And having witnessed this as, as young as a kid in third world economies, watching what hot money does, one of the most enduring characteristics of hot money is it convinces the recipient that they are God's gift to capitalism, that it's because they are remarkable. Their industry, you never quite understand, and you get all of the attendant narratives. Everybody's moving here for the lifestyle, for a local real estate boom. No one's making any more land. Mortgages, never go bust. You fill in the blank. This is the narrative, that the siren song of late cycle hot money. I've seen it in mining companies, execs convinced that they're special. I've seen it now in the vet space. I sold my vet practice for about 15 times EBITDA about 6 or 7 months ago. Just preposterous valuations. And where is this coming from? The global hunt for yield. An army of baby boomers who have undersaved and overspent and desperately looking for income, 10,000 of them a day, turning 65 until, 2038 or something. These are huge, huge headwinds to overcome. And as organizations like CalPERS and all the rest of these companies and pension plans and so forth are looking for yield, they increasingly move out onto the margins of credulity there. And so inside of all of these assumptions, including the ongoing extrapolation that DSOs will continue to be trading at preposterous multiples, is a very deeply embedded, insidious trend that, as you alluded to, David, has been there for 41 years. And because of large trends they become insidious, they're just baked into our assumptions. No one's paying attention to trend changes. It was back in August of 2020 that David, you and I and Mike all got to be kind of the crusty old guys in the Muppets up on the balcony, sitting there saying, hey, this is likely to end. And what we're all paying attention to there is interest rates. And I am convinced, as I was at the time, increasingly convinced, that the July 2020 lows in interest rates represent the end of a then 41-year cycle or 40-year cycle of declining interest rates. Interest rates falling, assets that are leveraged off of them, of course, increase in the same sort of teeter-totter fashion that you would expect. One goes down, the other goes up. And with the rise in asset price goes a rise in expectations of future yield, future value. Multiples have gone from X to Y, therefore they'll go to Z. This is happening constantly. It was in March of 2018 that I was at a large dental event, about 600 or 700 docs, and I was making the case that we're very late in the cycle of these ridiculous multiples. At the time, they were 15 or 16 times EBITDA. And I was using examples of hot money in different sectors. And those that were choosing to listen chose to hear that this is late in the cycle in the equity market. That's not where dentists have to worry about. They have to worry about their practice valuation, especially if it's a large part of the nut that they're going to use to fund their future income needs. And at the time, that was the high water mark. 16, one individual I know did a deal at 17 times. This is astounding. Those people were buying losses, amazingly. Now, fast forward to today, and we're seeing 5-6 times for those same practices. What's changed? You would think that suddenly there's 2/3 less teeth in a human skull. Well, that's not the case. You would think that suddenly 2/3 of, there's been a 160% increase in the number of practices or dentists. Well, that's not true. What could possibly justify it is the departure of hot money. And I think that those July 2020 interest rate lows are crucial for us to anticipate the future valuations. Because all valuations are a relative trade. Everything is a relative trade. This hot money is saying, if we could get 10% in a profitable practice, give back 3% as a management fee, we're taking the 7% yield. When interest rates are on corporate bonds are 3 or 4%, that's a good trade. But when those interest rates get to 6 or 7, why would we want to deal with dental practices and OSHA and legal oversight and click sell. This is what worries me. I think it's still out in the future, but it concerns me.
Yeah, well said. So let's take currently today what the market's giving us, and those who are on the precipice of in a position where they want to sell, they can sell if they get a certain valuation and a certain after-tax gain on equity. If you enjoyed watching or learning from this video, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel for more content. If you have a question about any of my content or this specific video, just please leave a comment down below. And as always, stay focused on your freedom. I'll see you next time.